Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast. My name is John, and joining me today is Ryan.
Hello again.
And again is right because we're back to talk about Solo for a third time here, third solo show, second one for the two of us, Ryan. But yeah, we recorded a show together last weekend talking about Solo, and we had to cut it short. We didn't get through everything we wanted to talk about. We left off on the good stuff, which was kind of like the things you enjoyed about the movie. We got into that a little bit, but since then, we've both had a chance to go see the movie for a third time, I think. Is that right, Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. When did you go for your third time? Was it today?
I went this morning, a
Oh.
9 a.m. showing.
9 a.m. at the Alamo Draft House?
Yeah, of course.
All right, nice. So for those 9 a.m. shows, they still do the whole hoopla, like the song and dance, all that stuff in the beginning, the pre-show?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Still get your half-hour pre-show. Still can order whatever food and drinks you desire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that half-hour pre-show, does that start at 9 or does that start at 8:30?
Starts at 8:30.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I got to get to a Star Wars screening in an Alamo Draft House one of these days. Sometime.
Yeah, I always see them so many times that like I know the pre-show like way too well. Because it's like birth movies death does them, and they're great, but like I've always seen them so many times. Like I can tell you what was in the Force Awakens one, I can tell you what was in the Rogue One and the Last Jedi, and I'm becoming intimately familiar with the Solo pre-show.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that because after your first viewing of Solo, you were like, "Yeah, I might not go back and see it again." So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You're getting some more experience with it. So I think what we're going to do for the show is talk about like where we're at after 3 viewings, just kind of general thoughts on the movies or the movie and stuff, and then we are going to talk about Pablo Hidalgo's official guide to the movie, which is essentially the visual dictionary, but rebranded a little bit. So we'll talk about that, and that is kind of like set up in chapters, kind of goes through the movie chronologically. So it's a good way to sort of structure another conversation about the movie, and then also talk about some of the cool stuff that is in this book. So that's the deal. Ryan, I want to know kind of like where you're at after 3 viewings of Solo and how you're feeling about the movie at this point.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned on the show last time, I didn't love the movie my first viewing. Again, spoilers, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Heads up, spoilers coming in hot. I think I was like, the movie my first time felt like weirdly paced, and and then by the time we got to like the mall reveal, I was just kind of exhausted, and that reveal in particular took a lot of wind out of my sails, of like an already iffy viewing, and so I didn't feel great about it the first time, and then the second time, like kind of knowing what the movie was and what it was trying to be and what it was doing, I appreciated it more for what it was on my second viewing. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I kind of appreciated it on its own terms. And then this third viewing, like, I'm straight up a fan. I think one of the big things is the first couple of viewings lacked a sort of emotional punch for me, which I had, kind of come to expect from, even with the prequels, especially from like episode 3 and on, Star Wars movies have had like that, just leaving you with that, with like a really strong feeling, whether it be, like the entire end of Revenge of the Sith, or like the the lightsaber, the flying lightsaber in the woods in Force Awakens, and then the moment with Rey and Luke at the very end, and there's just all these moments in the movies that just like leave you just like having so many feelings. And I didn't get that in the first two viewings, but I gotta say, like, there were a few like little things on my third viewing that kind of got me excited. Kind of started those butterflies going, and I would say like Enfys Nest's theme, like her music, really has started like grabbing me in the way that like good Star Wars music does. And then also, I spoke at length in the last episode about how much I loved Kira's arc and the way her story ends in the movie. But her, that final shot of her, looking out the window of the first light, the yacht, like just that shot, like definitely stirred a bit, as well. So like I think I'm like kind of settling into it as like a Star Wars movie that does in fact resonate with me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah. So maybe still like potentially your least favorite Star Wars movie, but one that you enjoy. Because after the first time, you were like pretty not like, I don't like that movie. So
yeah, pretty much.
Wherever it lands for you, I'm just glad that you appreciate it and enjoy it at this point. So that's good.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so I went for a third time. I think Wednesday night with Kevin. It was his second time going, and I keep going to these really late showings, which I need to go to.
You gotta stop. You're not a late showing type of guy.
I'm really not a late showing type of guy. No, I need to start going to the early ones like you did today. So, so I was fighting to stay awake a little bit, which takes away from the enjoyment of it. But it's definitely not oh, the movie was boring me, so I was like fighting to stay awake. It was more like I'm not good at staying up late at all. So, but I'm really enjoying it. I think, not much change for me necessarily from the second to third viewing. But on the second and third viewings, I'm just the few things I didn't love, like mainly the Darth Maul thing. It's just so much less of an issue seeing the movie multiple times. You're shocked by it the first time. After this or during the second and third viewings, it was just like, okay, well, that part's still weird and I don't really like it, but it's just one of many moments in the movie versus like the moment that was kind of dominating my reaction after the first time I saw the movie. So, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, the performances are just, they only get better. I feel like the more you watch, Alden and Donald Glover, especially, and stuff like Enfys Nest. I wasn't sure what to think after the first viewing about a character like Enfys Nest, just because it was such a kind of a so different than what I expected. But no, I really like that character and that whole like the Marauders Cloud Rider gang. Like I think that whole thing is pretty cool. And yeah, I really like the movie. And there's some like there's a little bit of emotion to it for me, but it is definitely a lighter, just more fun, entertaining experience. I don't feel like the more times I watch it, like that that there's like all this depth that's kind of revealing itself to me necessarily or anything like that, which I don't need it to. It's fine. But a movie like Last Jedi, the more I watched it, the more I was like, oh my God, I kind of like, I see what he's doing here in this moment, or, there's added resonance to certain things. But maybe the one exception to that is Kira. I do think that the whole Kira story and the performance from Emilia Clarke and just the arc of that character, I think it works for me better or more as the more times I watch the movie, which is not to say that I didn't like it initially, but just I didn't have very strong feelings about it initially, and the more I watched the movie, especially the final scenes with Kira, the more I really appreciate. I think what the writers did with that character, what Emilia Clarke was doing with that character, and I think she's really good. So that's a highlight for me now after multiple viewings. Where after one viewing, it was like, okay, that's cool, but it wasn't necessarily a major part of my enjoyment of the movie. So
yeah, I think I would agree. Like her scenes are the ones that get better every time because there is quite a bit of like subtlety and nuance to her performance. The way that she like bounces back, it's especially apparent in scenes where she's interacting with Han and Dryden Voss at the same time. The way she like bounces between those two and like keeps this like middle ground there. It's like, and it's just through like a lot of subtleties and nuance in her performance, like the way she reacts to things, like her like stone cold facial expression. Especially in the scene where Dryden tells her that she's going to be going with Beckett and Han and Chewie on the Kessel Run. Just like the way she reacts, or almost like lack of a reaction, is like fascinating to watch. Just like reading her face the entire time it's great. Like I think she just killed it on that performance.
yeah, absolutely, she's great. So cool. Well, yeah, I definitely want to go see the movie a couple more times over the next month or so while it's in theaters. I'm definitely really curious to see what happens this weekend with the box office, and how things go. I hope it's around for quite a while. I think it'll make it into July. I'm going to guess in theaters for sure. But I hope it has a strong second weekend. And hopefully it builds a little momentum. We'll see.
Ron Howard voice.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Oh, are we already getting numbers back?
Yeah, we're already getting initial reports. It was a pretty huge drop off. I think it's like 28 million projected for this weekend.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
I'm so that bums me out so much because like I would think the word of mouth coming out of the movie would be pretty positive, like pretty good.
But man, once something is like tainted for whatever, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why, and I don't like. I'm already kind of like sick of that conversation. But like once something, I mean, that's where the term box office poison comes from. Like in a sense, like once it's there, like there's not much recovering.
Yeah, I mean all the headlines about how much money it didn't make last weekend probably didn't help it make any more money this weekend. I guess, right? Like, yeah,
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's so disappointing. It's really disappointing, and it's not that I want it to be, or it's not that the box office matters that much to me, but I want it to be successful, and I want, especially, I think we this came up in a text conversation with some of us over the last day or two, is like, I want the people who made that movie, specifically Alden and Donald Glover and Emilia Clarke and Tanny Newton, all those people, I want them to sort of like be able to feel proud of like what a cool movie it is, and specifically like what great performances Alden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover gave, and like trying to play those roles that had already been created by other actors. Like, it's just so good, and it bums me out that if the movie is perceived as a failure at the box office, then that's gonna like extend beyond that, and be remembered as like not a popular movie, not a well-received movie, and then I just hate the idea that those guys are feeling like maybe they weren't successful, because I think they were fantastic, and that just sucks.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that it's Star Wars, so it like by default gets to have like a long tail, especially through Disney. Like, it's something that maybe people will discover on Blu-ray, or maybe people will discover it on the streaming service. Um, you know, I think like I mean, I think it's a good movie, and I think it's if you like Star Wars, eventually you will probably like this movie, even if you don't initially. Um, and I think once it's like available and not requiring a trip to a movie theater, because I mean, movie getting people to see a movie in the theaters is already like a ridiculous uphill battle, and um, I think when it's more readily available, I think, I mean, it's always going to be remembered as a box office failure because it was, and that's just the way it is. But I think it like will still end up being remembered fondly in the long term, in the same way, like, we've had this conversation countless times since December. Like, there's a lot of people who, maybe not a lot, but a vocal, maybe minority, maybe majority, who knows. But there's a group of people who really don't like The Last Jedi. And I think, like, we've had conversations where we have faith in that movie that people will come around to it. And, maybe it will be at episode 9. Maybe it will be in 10 years from now. But, I think it's, if people can, like, this year come around to the live action Speed Racer movie, like, and that get like a huge second wind in recent months, I think people will come around to The Last Jedi and Solo, even though like Last Jedi was a movie that like everyone saw. And I think that's a perception issue, whereas Solo, I think a lot of people who would like this movie have not seen it, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, we probably shouldn't spend too much time talking about this because I do want to get into the official guide. But, as a giant Star Wars fan, for the longest time, I was like, I really kind of wish they weren't making this movie, and I think a lot of people probably, general audiences, maybe are still at that place where it's like, here, Han Solo is such a great character. Harrison Ford's such a great actor. I don't need to see some, other person, like some other approximation of it. Like, it's great as it is. I don't want to see it spoiled by some other thing, and maybe that's a more widely held, kind of attitude towards it than we realized going into it. I don't know. I think it's a lot of things. I think we talked about it a little bit on the last show anyway, but hopefully it does find a second life at some point, or, that it kind of maybe has just like a more slow and steady kind of box office thing here, but I guess it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case based on this weekend. I don't know. The Big Lebowski was a little bit of an influence on this movie, and that's a movie that was not successful in the theater and is now a cult classic and totally beloved and huge. So maybe something like that can happen. I don't know. If we have time at the end, perhaps we can talk about where we think things might be headed with these characters and if we'll get a sequel and stuff like that. But
sure.
That's a whole nother conversation.
It is. I do want to, before we dig into the official guide, I do want to dig into one. I think it's a major criticism for me that I feel like I can finally articulate, that like was on the tip of my tongue last episode. Okay. But now I like watching it today, like I realized, because like I felt my mood drop during these points, that I think overall it is a mostly pretty well shot movie. I think the cinematography by Bradford Young is pretty excellent throughout, especially in like the close quarters character interactions and stuff. Like I think, that's partially, Ron Howard's direction, partially the performance, but also partially like the cinematographer, like letting those scenes breathe, like the scene I mentioned before with Kira and Han and Dryden. But I will say I I'm not a huge fan of the scenes, like the one color palette scenes. It starts in the white worm layer where it's just this like this just blue, like
Yep.
kind of over everything, which makes sense because that's in like it's in the sewers, like it's under well or underground, I guess, wherever it is. It's like below surface level. They don't have light because of Malak and Lady Proxima's aversion to that. So that kind of makes sense. But then I think um, the Mimbin stuff, while I love that they are setting, scenes on Mimbin and Splinter of the Mind's Eye throwback and all of that, that's great. But that also has like a very dull, like black and brown color
Mm-hmm.
palette for the entirety of that scene. And and it's just, and that's not something new to Star Wars, like especially like planets having their own like color palette and stuff, but it's like everything, like the clothes people are wearing, like the outfits, and okay, it's guerrilla warfare, they're camouflaging, but like it's just another extended period of time where it's just like one dark color. And then also, like, and I talked about this on the last episode, the like the opposite of this is like Vandor, where it's basically just white the whole time. And it's just, again, like just kind of dull. And I think that scene in general is the train heist scene is still my least favorite chunk of the film, overall. But also just like being that like kind of singular color palette just also just kind of bums me out. And I think it's just it like those are three significant chunks of the film that aren't super visually appealing to me. And I think that like does drop it a bit, especially Star Wars is it's something of a visual spectacle, and not necessarily in like just the realm of special effects, but in the artistry and like the world creation and the the camera work and everything. So I think that kind of bums me out, and I think that's something that, like, you mentioned the mall thing. It happens, you're not surprised by it anymore, you get over it. Like, I think that's something that's super easy to get over, but I think like these scenes that are just like really visually unappealing are just, that's going to resurface every like viewing of the movie, and that's kind of a bummer for me.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not really something not that I didn't notice it, but I guess it's not something that bothered me all that much. But I hear where you're coming from, and I'm continue to be surprised. Like, I really thought this movie would be very colorful and sort of bright, and it's not, really at all. Like the last third of it, I guess, is considerably brighter and sort of pops a little more and stuff than the rest of it. And like the scenes on the Falcon, the scenes on, I believe, Savareen, that stuff is definitely brighter. I love the look during the Kessel Run, which is, I mean, they're in space and it's dark, but it's still like, I guess, I don't know if it's sort of saturated or if it's just like brighter in terms of like the way that's being, I don't know. It feels like a cartoon, that part, to me, sort of. And I love that, but you're right. The first half of the movie, there's a lot of like, it's more gritty looking and definitely less of a color palette, kind of in a lot of those sections. So I hear you. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, but let's get into the official guide. And so we're talking about Pablo Hidalgo's book, Solo, the official guide from DK. And I wanted to talk about, I think it's kind of interesting. I think, very much this is the visual dictionary, right? Which is what it was called for at least some of the releases. I was talking to a friend of the show, Caleb, the other day, and he was like, well, they kind of jump around with what they call them. Like sometimes it's a visual dictionary, but for Rogue One, they called it something else, I think he said, which I don't remember for sure. But, you know, even it's not only the name is different here, but also like the layout is definitely kind of different than it has been in the typical visual dictionary. And I think the visual dictionary look that like we have for like The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens visual dictionaries is sort of like it's part of like the kind of like the DK style guide. It just like kind of looks like those books do. But for this one, it's much more colorful. And yeah, it's not just like the plain white pages with like the text features kind of like labeling things. It's every page is colorful. There's a lot of like what do you call them, like little text boxes, and yeah, it's just a totally different look. I guess I can hold up like a picture, or like hold up the book for those watching the YouTube video, and you can kind of see like that the pages are more colorful, and it's not just like the plain white pages, which I like overall. I think it's an improvement, but there's also a little bit of me that's like, oh man, it's a bummer that it's not like that, because there's something just very kind of nostalgic and just very comforting about the look of those DK books. Because I remember reading them about like medieval castles, like a book like that from when I was a kid, and it looked exactly like the Star Wars visual dictionaries do. So, what do you think about the change in the layout?
I think it's interesting. It's like it. I don't know. Like it kind of. It feels like there's more going on, like layout wise, for sure. It kind of reminds me of the change from like Solo official guide feels like a video game magazine from the early 90s, and like as opposed to like the DK books, like the visual dictionaries, which feel like a video game website today. Like just more like sterile and stuff, but like it feels like in this official guide there's just colors and like weird stripes and like borders around everything, and like there's like a ton of like little separate boxes in addition to like the big thing on the page. But so I don't know, I like it. I mean, I think overall it serves the exact same purpose. I will say I like the binding of this a lot better.
Okay.
Like it's more squat and thicker, and I think like the spine is like really cool. Excuse me. And yeah, it feels like in my hands, like it feels nicer. I like that they lost the dust jackets, which never really felt appropriate to like what this is.
Yeah.
Like a dust jacket, like yeah, like I want it on my like Art of Solo book, but on this, when it's like you pull the dust jacket off and it's the exact same picture on and back on like the book, and it's like, why is that even there? Kind of thing. Yeah, like overall, like I definitely like the feel of this more.
Yeah. Well, that's what you come to the Blockade Runner podcast for, guys, because I bet we're not the only Star Wars podcast doing shows about Solo at this point. Like everyone's doing that, but I feel like we are probably the only podcast that's talking about the binding of the official guide and the improvements made to it, or even the layout of the book, to be honest. So
I'm sure someone else is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
well,
there are hundreds of that's true.
Like, hey, if you listen to a Star Wars podcast that has a good breakdown of using like a lot of like publishing terms about the book, like send it our way. Like I'd love to listen to that stuff. Like I think both of us like love physical, tangible Star Wars books, whether it be the comics or the, the guides, the novels, whatever. So, yeah.
Jedi Journals.
I was just gonna say, I haven't
we both listened to that.
Because they haven't put out their episode yet.
Not post solo, no. Yeah. Right. So
they'll probably break it down.
Well, for now, we're the only ones who have talked about the binding of the official guide, I think. So that's cool. Yeah. Another thing that's different besides just the layout and I guess the binding is that it's broken up into chapters too, which I don't think they've really done before. They don't do the chapters. So I like that. So I think what we'll do is just kind of like pop through each chapter and talk about that, section of the movie and kind of what's in there content wise and stuff. So the first chapter is called Mean Streets, and this is the Corellia kind of section. I guess we've probably talked about that section of the movie a fair amount. You had brought up like the stuff with like Moloch and Lady Proxima and how dark and blue everything is in that section. Which I think I kind of like that. It reminds me, the whole sequence kind of reminds me of like the Dark Crystal or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, with these, like, I don't know. I especially Lady Proxima's voice, which I thought was really great. It just felt like a puppet, from like one of those movies, like, Dark Crystal, really, I think is the one I'm thinking of,
Sure. Yeah.
But I feel like we needed more emphasis on Lady Proxima in this section of the book. There's just like one little text blurb about Lady Proxima, and she is like for sure a highlight of the movie, I think. So need more Lady Proxima.
But as I mentioned to you via text earlier in the week, if you want more Lady Proxima, more information about the inner workings of the White Worms, definitely check out Most Wanted. The corresponding or tie-in young adult novel, which I'm over halfway through, and it is just like consistently fantastic. And I honestly, like, I'm actually at the point where I'm like, I don't know how the author, I think Ray Carson, how she's going to end this, because it puts the characters in an interesting predicament, and a lot of that has to do with Lady Proxima. So
man, I cannot. I gotta read that. I can't wait. Yeah. I haven't picked that up yet. I gotta do that soon. So yeah, for sure. I still think Han looks a little like, on 3 viewings, like there's something going on in Han's appearance in the opening of this movie. I don't know if it extends all the way through like when they're in the spaceport in Corellia, but like when he's in that speeder and when he's like in the White Worm lair or whatever, there's something like, I don't know if it's makeup or if they did something digitally or what, but I feel like the shape of his face is different, and like, I don't know, he just looks really different, I think. And I don't think it's just the haircut.
Well, there probably is something subtly different about him, because the same thing's happening with Kira during these scenes too. I think she looks way different. And I think for her, like it a lot of it is her haircut.
Yeah.
But I think it was intentional with the performances, because there's going to be a 3-year gap.
Yeah.
And no, I absolutely get that, and I think that was something intentional, but it is really hard to put your finger on exactly what it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So other stuff that's in this section of the book is a lot more information about the scrum rats, which that's fun. I feel like that's mostly just stuff that Pablo probably comes up with, just to kind of fill out a book like this. I don't know how much of it would have been really kind of.
So it ties into Most Wanted.
Okay. All right.
So you,
So maybe I need to come back to this page about the scrum rats after I read Most Wanted, huh? I'll find it a little more interesting.
Yeah, not on like pages 24 and 25. I will say young Hallen, looks like a potential pod racer.
Yeah, with the goggles on there.
Yeah, he's great. I love Tunnel Tully.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's got a great look.
Earns his keep by patching into power and data grids. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, actually, the on the next couple pages, the hounds and the Carillion thugs tie in with most. You get a bit more on them in Most Wanted.
I noticed Rebolt in the movie when I went for my third viewing, and I don't think I'd really noticed him too much before. I think he's the one that's hitting Han with the pipe in that opening or in that scene with Lady Proxima.
Okay.
But then I noticed, when I really noticed him was when he's the one who grabs Kira when they're trying to get through that, that entrance into like the intergalactic port, like whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I think he's the one who grabs her. So.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
And I'm excited because I believe there is a 3 3/4-inch Rebolt in Corellian Hound 2-pack coming out at some point. So I'll be looking forward to grabbing that.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if you'd heard about that one, or hopefully I'm right about that. But I think there's a 2-pack coming. I love the 2-packs. Like I've got the Lando and Kesselgarden. I think that's a great pack. So
I got the Rose and BB-8 and BB-9, 9E. I guess BB-8.
Isn't there one more too, or is it just the 3?
Then there's the Well, I guess there is a reason. There's the Obi-Wan or the Qui-Gon Darth Maul.
Yeah.
2-pack, which when that came out with the Solo stuff, I'm like, why are they giving us Qui-Gon and Darth Maul? That makes no sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense now. Huh?
Yeah.
No, I meant like in the Rose BBE or BB-9E BB-8 pack. I thought there was a 4th figure, but
no.
Okay, it's her and the 2 droids, but 2 droids make up for, or the equivalent of 1 3 3/4-inch figure, I guess. So that's cool. So. Yeah. One more thing from this chapter that I really liked was I like this character of Dobarn Tren on page 30, who is a priest of the Sacred Way, and he comes to help the poorest residents of Corellia, but then the Empire kind of kicks him out. They accuse him of a bunch of stuff he didn't do, and he has to leave. But he's a cool looking alien for sure, I think. I like that fellow.
There's a lot of good ones here. Yeah. Hargic on page 31.
Oh yeah. He's a blob like Ugor, whatever that is. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think I'm ready to move on to chapter 2, Trench Warfare.
Yeah, so am I.
Which we talked about. So this is this one's cool. Like there's an emphasis on obviously like stormtroopers and armor and like different vehicles and stuff in this section, which I think is really cool. I love the look of the wet weather gear stormtroopers, but I don't think like we might see them just like very little in the movie, right? Yeah. On the battlefield, you just see the infantry troops.
Yep. Yeah, because you don't they would have stuck out a ton with their white armor, but like all you see are the dark colored armor.
So I don't know if that was designed and they shot some stuff with them and then they didn't end up using it, which I think we could probably apply to the Mimbanese also.
Yes.
Do you ever see them in the movie?
So I think, and I'm not totally sure, but I think one of Emphas Nest's Cloud Riders is a Mimbanese.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think when they're all taking off their helmets and they're like, all of our worlds were ravaged by these syndicates in the Empire. I think one of them is a Mimbanese, but I'm not totally sure.
Okay. Well, that would be cool. Yeah, I was definitely looking forward. Like when I heard that Mimban was one of the planets, I was really excited. Based on Splinters of the Mind Eye or Splinter of the Mind's Eye and that character Hala, and I just thought there'd be something maybe that was more of a callback to that book. And there may be stuff in the movie that is a little bit. I mean, it was a muddy planet, like a swampy, muddy planet, and that's obviously the case with the planet in the movie. But we really don't see anything of it. It's just like a battlefield at night or dusk, or maybe it's just daytime, but it's that dreary there on Mimban. I don't know.
I have a theory.
Okay.
I have a theory that the Mimban stuff was one of like the reshot sections, because it's so like it's a battlefield, but there's only like 3 characters on screen at like any point. So it feels like they just like that feels like something where they just set up like a small like a really small area for shooting, and like that feels totally reshoot
So
to
you
me,
think
and
that
I have no
sequence?
idea.
Yeah, but you think that sequence maybe would have been quite a bit different in the Lord and Miller cut if it were to have been completed?
If it even existed in that cut.
Well, I have the Art of book from Phil Shostak that I can't wait to kind of dig into.
Yeah,
I've only been able to read the first few pages, so maybe we'll be able
I
to.
flipped through it, but I didn't read all the text, so maybe it does tell in there.
Yeah, I think we'll come back and talk about that book maybe on the next episode, because
For sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of great stuff to glean from that. And as we've said before, those books from those Art of books have sort of taken the place of, or they have to act as kind of our closest thing to a making of each movie. So we'll probably learn a little bit about that kind of stuff in there. I'm sure they're not going to spill the beans too much on anything related to the director change, but they did do that article. I think it was in either Hollywood Reporter or Variety. I can't remember which one. I don't know if you read that or not, Ryan. That came out like a few days before the movie released, where they really kind of acknowledged some of that stuff and talked about it much more than they ever had before. Sort of like why things happened, and why they had to make the decision to replace Lord and Miller. So anyway, okay. Yeah, well, I like those mud troopers. I think the Mimbanese look really cool too. I would love to have seen them in the movie, so we can hold out hope maybe for the Blu-ray that there'll be stuff like that. What else? The ATDT, which is an all-terrain defense turret, so kind of like a turret on legs, looks like a Scout Walker. There's like there's really just like one kind of image of it, on page 36, but it's really small. And man, that's like a new vehicle design. I would love to have seen a better look at that in here.
And that's the one, like, doesn't it like drop onto the battlefield?
Yeah, I think so.
And
yeah.
Is that what like the ship that Beckett's
the
crew
AT haulers
steals? Yeah, like is that what that ship does? Is like drop these ATDTs?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that. Because like we never like we don't really ever know like how like the AT-ATs like get onto like Hoth and stuff. Like I mean, it doesn't really matter, but like, in the other movies, like I feel like in I mean, I guess even well, no, like really, it's really just Empire Strikes Back, where I'm like, I have no idea how those AT-ATs get onto Hoth.
Yeah.
Because that was like before the like just escalating size of capital ships started happening. Because now, like when you're talking about like Last Jedi, it's like, well, how did all that stuff get onto Crate? Oh wait, they have these ginormous dreadnought ships and like Snoke ships that have like just like AT or ATCAT like breeding grounds. Like
it's like a factory for that stuff on there. Yeah. Snoke's mega destroyer is like the size of like a medium-sized city or something. Yeah. So yeah. But then again, you don't really get the impression that like that mega star destroyer would end up going planet side, so they'd probably still need some kind of ship to bring it down to the planet. But
that's true. Like I feel like this opens up a really negative can of worms, like because now I just want to know how all these ships get onto planets, or all these like vehicles get onto planets.
Right.
It's a huge problem now. I don't know if I'll ever sleep again.
Maybe one or two other things from this section, trench warfare, that I really liked, is there's a reference to an R5 droid having a Kerner optical holographic projector, which was like a nice little reference from Pablo there, because that was the building that ILM was in up near San Francisco, like near Lucasfilm. It was in like a strip mall, I believe, and the business that was in there before was called Kerner Optical, and they just left that up so that people wouldn't know what was going on in there. So they would call it the Kerner Building and stuff. I believe that's the case.
Oh, crazy! I never knew that.
Yeah,
Huh.
yep. So that was like a little reference there, and I'm sure there's tons of stuff like all throughout. I heard somebody say that Coronet was like the first theater that showed A New Hope, like one of the pre-screenings, because that's the name of the spaceport in on Corellia. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I had heard. So I think there's like a lot of little things like that, yeah, which are cool. And then I also I love the pay on page 47. It's nothing like really specific, but just like all the little references to the odd shape of the jacket that Rio is wearing, or like the weird way his gait is unusual and strangely fluid. Just like, I love the fact that instead of saying, hey, there's an alien dude underneath this costume, like the visual guide here, or the official guide, just sort of like dances around that issue and is like, wow, isn't it strange the way this stormtrooper walks around? You know what I mean? It's just fun. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. So, and I think we get a little insight into Chewbacca too, on page 50 and 51, that you don't necessarily totally get from the movie, which is the fact that like most of the Wookiees have been enslaved by the Empire. Chewbacca is not actually enslaved by the Empire, which is why he's not with the rest of like the Wookiees. He's on this planet because he was captured as a fugitive, but like his whole thing is he's trying to locate his tribe, which Beckett kind of, that comes up in that conversation with Beckett. But yeah, just the idea that like, hey, he's on Mimban because he got captured by the Empire, but it's like there's not a bunch of other Wookiees around. He's on his own, and he's trying to like, do what he can for the cause to help other Wookiees.
Yeah, it mentions in here that the local imperial officers there have neither the resources nor the inclination to process the prisoner and send him back to Kashyyyk.
Yeah, that's funny. So, yeah, but as far as that whole section of the movie goes, I don't know. I love the transition from the first part of the movie to that when the officer is like, well, we'll have you, what does he say? We'll have
flying
you flying in no time.
And then it's like him like shot and like flying back. Yeah,
that part's cool. And I like all the character stuff on Mimban, like the way he comes together with that crew, even though the setting itself, like I do feel like I really was really excited, like, oh, they're going to this like EU splinter of the Mind's Eye like planet. Like I thought that was all really cool, and then it didn't really turn out to be very much as far as like a location goes. So I guess that's a little disappointing, but I enjoy that part of the movie. I love the way Han and Chewie meet, which we talked about in the last episode, but I like that part of the movie, but visually, I guess it's not super cool necessarily.
Yeah, and I think also last night I watched Attack of the Clones.
It does look like that. Again. It does look like that Stormtrooper battle, or the Clone Trooper battle scene where they're on the ground.
The way that like that movie frames like a battlefield is like, you get those like wide shots, you get the establishing shots, you get you get the up close and personal combat and stuff, but you also get like the bigger picture of it, like being this massive battle. Whereas like this feels more like I don't know, like Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, just like that shaky cam, like right in there, type of like boots on the ground, soldier's eye view type situation. And then like really like you're not even really engaged in the conflict. You just know there's a bunch of stuff exploding everywhere. It's all about like moving the plot forward and establishing a new set of characters.
Yeah, and that is kind of a weird element of that of that movie, is that like you don't even see who they're fighting. You don't see the Mimbanese at all. You just see like explosions and these Imperial troops. So Yeah, it can be.
That's why I'm calling reshoot on this one.
Yeah, it could. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It definitely, absolutely could be. So, yeah, who knows? All right, well, let's jump into the next section, which is chapter 3, which is the Great Robbery, which is your least favorite part of the movie, Ryan.
It is. It is.
I still think the idea of Vandor is pretty cool, but it's really not executed all that well or interestingly, which I guess is kind of a recurring theme here because I feel that way about the Mimban part too. But like the first page of this section talks about Vandor being a stunning frontier world and how the air is super clean and it has these snow-capped mountains and lush plains and all this stuff. And I think you get that in the establishing shots, but that's about it. Like once you're, and we talked about this last time too, but once you're in there, I don't feel like it's too interesting looking, really.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of shots of mountains and shots of like a train moving on a track, and then close-ups of people like fiddling with stuff on like steel gray metal. And like there are some like great character moments. This is the section where we lose Val and Rio. And I think, Rio's death is especially important to the film, and I think it does like affect Han in a way. I still feel like Val's death does not really have any impact, and it's feels like kind of a bummer use of that character overall. But but other than that, I think I just find it like a kind of dull scene, even though and it's definitely not the best. It's the reveal of Enfys Nest and the Marauders, but it's not really the moment where they shine.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they were trying to maintain the mystery about them for sure, so that kind of makes sense. But they kind of swoop in and literally like on their swoop bike swoop in and out, but you don't really kind of get it doesn't communicate that much about them or make them seem that interesting. When you see them on Savareen later on, they seem really great and very compelling and interesting and all that stuff. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I guess this is something that should have been super obvious to me, but I didn't really understand. Is that Val is I'm reading in here that she doesn't ever really like to tell much about herself to anybody, but Beckett has been able to coax out of her that her father was a musician, and I think they talk about that in that scene, don't they? That her father was a musician, but around the fire, maybe not, but. I guess
they mentioned the Valacord.
The Valacord. I did not put two and two together that she's named after the Valacord, which we're seeing here on page 59, and that makes a lot more sense. Like when Beckett talks about like how he's going to learn that Valacord, like that's a tribute kind of to Val. So when he mentions that later on in the movie, knowing now that it's named after her or that she's named after that instrument, that makes it a little more poignant that he's still talking about learning the Valacord.
For sure.
So I like that.
I actually have a question about this. I don't know if you noticed it. I have trouble every time during, and we're jumping ahead a ton, but during Beckett's death sequence when after he's like, that was a good move, I would have shot you. And then does he say, I'm never going to get to learn to play the Valcord, or does he say I was never going to learn to play the Valcord? Or what does he say there?
I think he says something like, I really was going to learn the Valcord.
Okay. Or is it that, or is it I really wasn't going to?
Oh,
because that, just kind of how he's like a deceitful character. Like I was thinking about that when I was watching it this time. I was like, oh, I wish I could rewind that right now. Cause like,
I'll have to pay closer attention to it the next time I go. But I've always interpreted that moment to be like, well, like I really was going to do that. Like, that really was like I was going to get out of this life. I was going to go back to I forget the name of his. I know the name of it. It's like two words, Glee something.
Yeah,
Glee and Selm.
Lisa, yeah.
Glee and Selm. Like I'm
Yeah.
looking at it here in the book on page 57.
Okay.
It's Glee, and then the second word is ANSL or ANSELM.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it seems like I think you're right. Like the way you're pronouncing it sounds more like how they say it, like Gleon. I don't know. Like it's kind of fast, that second
Yeah.
word. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He was going to go back there. He's going to learn the vowel chord, and yeah. So it's kind of like
Okay.
it's sort of like saying like, I was still connected to her, and I really was going to do this thing that we talked about doing, and I don't know. That's how I've always kind of looked at that
Okay.
part.
I need to hear that again because I almost love the idea, and I think maybe that's what I want because I have it in my head now, is like when him being just like, I wasn't ever going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
because my whole life is just like double, triple, quadruple crosses, and everything is just a lie about me, and I don't even know what this is the only truth. This is my final statement of truth,
I
that
only know
I
one
was
truth.
lying the whole
Yeah.
time. Like,
Well, I'll have to like I don't know this movie as well as I hope to get to know it eventually.
mhm.
Obviously, or as I probably will get to know it eventually. But like I feel like Beckett, because we have to really look at that character. Beckett is, like a blueprint for Han Solo, and it's like what Han
Mhm.
Solo aspires to be. And in some ways he does attain what he wants to become by, shooting first and killing Beckett there at the end, because that's like what Beckett would do. But on the other hand, I don't know, because Han is like the smuggler with the heart of gold, and he's more bravado than he is like follow through in terms of like all that stuff, um, being like out for himself. Like he talks about it more than he actually is out for himself, and you see that in
Mhm.
this movie too. Like he's very, kind-hearted and generous in what he'll do for other people and all that. And I feel like Beckett is the blueprint for that. I don't think it's as one-dimensional is like, well, Han just learns from him that you can't trust anybody and you've got to double cross people and all that. Like, I think
Mhm.
it's more complicated than that, because Beckett is like, I don't know, he never gets that mad at Han. I guess he's got a lot of empathy for people. He seems like he cares about people. And he was willing to double cross them because that's the code he lives by. But even when he did it, it's not like he did it like gleefully, or like he did it like, I was just lying to you. If you thought I cared about you at all, I was lying to you the whole time. I don't get that from Beckett. I feel like he is pretty much a pretty good dude himself. Even though he sells them out, it's just like, I think he's trying to tell Han all along, like, this is the understanding we all live with when we live this kind of life. Even between me and Val, there's a little bit of that potentially, and there is between you and me, Han, but that doesn't mean like I'm just this callous, cold person who doesn't care about anybody, So for me, I guess my understanding of Beckett, I can't see him saying like, oh, I was lying about that the whole time. I didn't care about Val. I don't care about anything except money. Like I don't see that in him as a character too much. And we it's a similar thing with Kira. I mean, Kira is probably more admirable than Beckett is, because she like never really turns her back on Han. To be honest, I mean she doesn't go with him in the end, but she kills Dryden and she lets him get away, and she's I think she's stuck where she is, and there's part of her that probably wants that power of like kind of taking Dryden's position. But even with her, it's not like I don't care about you, I'll toss you aside to get what I want. There's nothing like that from Beckett or Kira really in my mind. So I think both of those are formative. Like being around those people, that's like a formative experience for Han in both cases. And in both cases, they're not callous and soulless, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And neither is Han. Even when he wants to be in A New Hope, he's really not, So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
but I will watch that scene more closely next time, and we'll see the kind of what he's really saying. I wonder if the script is out for this movie. Like, I mean, not officially, but I wonder if it's like online somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, because we're not getting a novelization until September.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I think more layers of these characters will be revealed in the next year or so. But
yeah,
also with Kira, once again, Most Wanted is going to give you more insight into that character.
Ooh, okay.
As well.
Is it going to make me like her? Is it going to make me trust her more or less, would you say? Or you don't want to say?
I don't want to. It just gives you more insight. Like,
Okay.
I think more empathy and more understanding of who she is and how she eventually ends up where she does.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, pages 62 and 63 feature some text and imagery about coaxium.
Coaxium verge.
I feel like coaxium is like this major thing in the movie in terms of the plot and stuff, and it's a little bit like complicated. So it's just good to be able to see all this extra info about that.
Yeah.
There's good stuff about the range troopers, which I think is a really cool design. I've got the. Do you have the range trooper figure, Ryan?
I do.
The 3 3/4.
I do. That's a great looking figure.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love this guy. I still don't have that mud trooper. I need to get one of those, but
don't either. I've only I have not seen one on the pegs. That's the only figure I haven't seen on the pegs. I've only seen him at a markup.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because that's like a short packed figure for sure. So
yeah,
we'll see. Hopefully we get more of those. Then there's like 2 full pages about Enfys Nest, or like I guess 4 full pages about Enfys Nest at the end of this section. And I think that's cool because it's easily one of the most, if not the most, visually interesting design in the movie.
Yeah.
And she's like an important character for sure. And so it's cool that and like her swoop bike is so cool. So it's awesome that it gets like this whole layout here at the end of this section.
Yeah, I did finally buy that figure. I'm pretty anti buying vehicles for my 3 3/4 inch figures just because
of having space.
Yeah, they take up so much space, but I will make exceptions for the smaller vehicles if they're cool enough. Like I have a Raise bike and that figure 2-pack, and then I bought the Enfys Nest on the in her. Yeah. Oh, you actually have her on the bike.
You don't have her on the bike?
No, I couldn't get it looking the way I wanted. So I just have her standing in front of it. I wanted her like holding her staff and just looking super cool. But I really love the way the bike looks. And
yeah. Well, I got to reposition her all the time because Elliot really likes to play with this Enfys Nest toy, which is cool because it's awesome.
Can't blame him.
No. Did you see that they announced the Black Series Enfys Nest with swoop bike?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've really chilled on buying Black Series again because of space and cost. Like it was getting super not sustainable to like, buy 5 $20 figures every couple months. Like, and I just don't have the space for them. But I think that's one I'm gonna have to make an exception for. Because I mean she's just like one of my favorite new characters for sure, and her design's so good and I love the character. Might have to make an exception.
I think so. I don't do the Black Series stuff really at all. Like I don't. Well, I maybe get like one from each movie kind of. I have like a Phasma Black Series from Force Awakens,
which is such a great looking figure.
Yeah, I've got her, and I have like Luke from The Last Jedi. I wanted that one. Like I bought basically on Force Friday 2, I bought every Luke figure thing I could find.
Yeah.
So I have that one, and I think I might get this Enfys Nest Black Series. Even though I don't collect Black Series, but just because it's great, it looks great, and like you said, it's just such a cool new character, both design wise and just implementation in the movie too. So, so for sure, okay. So then, like moving on to the next section of the guide and of the movie, chapter 4 is Place Your Bets, and it starts out with Dryden Voss's Star Yacht, and some information about Dryden Voss as well. The scars on Dryden's face like get brighter and or more pronounced when he's angry, which is something that I've kind of noticed more as I've seen the movie more, which I think is cool. But let's not kid ourselves. The thing we really need to talk about in this section of the book is
wait. Let's wait. We'll get there.
Oh,
I
so you
know.
are kidding yourself. Okay. What
I
do you
am
think is important
no.
to talk
I
about?
think the reason why the scars is kind of why they kind of light up, I guess, is it's linked whatever this is, striation
Mm-hmm.
is linked to his circulatory system activity and adrenaline levels.
Uh-huh.
Like, yeah, I mean, he would not be a great player in Sabak,
No.
because his Sabak face, there would, he'd just tell. He'd be in a constant state of tell.
Yeah, he would not have a yeah, a strong sabak face at all. Yeah.
No, no. Okay.
Striations
Now,
mean a series of ridges, furrows, or linear marks, and they can be used in several ways, including glacial striation of geology, and hyperbolic geometry. Blah blah blah. I don't know what any of that means, but yeah, those are the
okay,
ridges on his face. So
cool.
okay, so let's get to the main event here.
Lulio Primoc.
Yes, exactly. Lulio Primoc and Orodia Ventifoli, the
Yep.
combo there. Okay.
Mhm.
Now I remember going way back to like the episode we did about the trailer that featured these two characters. I argued that Orodia Ventifoli was doing a sort of a sensual kind of dance with Lulio there. Somebody's using a drill at your house,
I
Ryan.
guess. What is that? Please stop.
I'm doubling down on that now after seeing the movie. I think it's very sensual in that moment.
Okay, that's really obnoxious. I'm sorry.
Is Lindsay racing RC cars out in the other room, or what's happening? Like,
I have no idea. It's very not cool. I apologize. Our
it's no big deal.
neighbors are doing some home improvement or something.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
you get after them. Oh, you're muting yourself when you're not speaking. Okay. Cool. Well, anyway, I'm doubling down. I think it's sensual. I think that Orodia is moving very much that way. Look, she's got that like long slit up the dress, to reveal the whole leg and thigh there. She's not playing around. And I don't know what they're singing about there, but man, he's the best. Lulio Primoc.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Galusian, whatever that means. But did you know he was a chart-topping singer in the years before the Clone Wars?
Yeah, thanks to the solo official guide, I know that now. And now that I know that, I can safely say I like his older stuff better.
Of course you do. Of course you do. He also starred in a series of old Hollow movies while wearing a dashing humanoid exosuit. No doubt what Orodia was thinking about as she was dancing there. But unfortunately, Lulio is now past his prime, but he's still favored by retro collectors and enthusiasts. And he's so past his prime, Ryan, that his repulsor lift fitted flask is filled with what now?
Formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So he's the equivalent of Jerry Lee Lewis playing at Riot Fest, Chicago.
Okay, rude. So also of interest here, I think, is the all the artifacts in Dryden Voss's study, which I think are really cool. Or no, actually though, before we get to that, have you listened to the soundtrack? Do you have the soundtrack?
Yeah, I got it on Apple Music and did one listen.
Yeah, so me too. I haven't bought the CD yet, but I do have it on Apple Music.
Well, don't buy the CD. Wait for the vinyl.
And well, I have the CDs for the last 3 Star Wars movies, so I'll probably get it. And I like to use the music in the podcast, like when I'm editing and stuff. Little clips of songs, and you can't do that with Apple Music. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I would like to get the vinyl too. We'll see about that. But anyway, the Lulio's vocals on the CD track,
disappointing.
Not the ones from the movie. Totally different. High pitched on the album, and then like low and what's the adjective to describe those vocals? Sensual. I keep going to that well too often, but charming. debonair. I don't know what you want to say, something like that.
I like the explanation Blast Points had, that like it's partially like a visual, like his vocals are so powerful that like you have to see them and hear them simultaneously to get like the real experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A little bit of a Laurel Yanny situation.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but I was going to say Dryden's study. I think that's pretty cool. Very much like an Indiana Jones type vibe with all the artifacts on display there. I don't know if there are any artifacts from Indiana Jones movies on display, like how Thrawn has in his study in Rebels, but
Yeah,
that would be a nice touch if there were. I don't believe the official guide points any of that kind of stuff out. So, yeah. Anything else from this section?
Yes.
Yeah.
Party guests.
Oh, you like that?
Pages
You like that
80
one?
and 81.
Okay.
You meant on those pages?
No, I meant on this whole
Okay,
section.
this section. Yeah, party guests. Blysto Noxton on page 80 is a great treat. He is an avant-garde holovid artist who fancies himself a deep thinker. His party-going research, as he puts it, for a masterpiece work of holo cinema yet to come. So he's like hanging out and partying and rubbing elbows with the the rich and famous and evil on the First Light, to create his masterwork.
Wow.
Kind of like, I don't know, like a Bret Easton Ellis or a Hunter S. Thompson / Chris Angel type character here.
Man, when is Chris Angel going to do an appearance in a Star Wars movie? That would be something.
Oh my god. I still want him for the Crow reboot. I think that would be some inspired casting. But,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I got on this page. I just really like Blysto Noxton and his backstory. Even though I don't see him, I haven't noticed him in the film anytime I've seen it.
Well, let's jump ahead to page 88 and 89, which is the Lando Calrissian page. And there's a lot of great stuff about Lando in there. His weapon is sleek, and it is made with brushed chromium. And I think, it says something about Naboo there. Where is that? Oh yeah, chromium mined from one of Naboo's moons, which I think is like a nice touch with Palpatine's and I guess Padme's ship having the Naboo, the chrome type thing from Naboo, and then Phasma's armor is an extension of that, being from that chrome from Naboo. So that's kind of like a nice little touch. But I wanted to point out at the top of page 89, the Calrissian Chronicles. That's a great moment from the movie. Him recording his vlog there. Or like for us, like podcasters, maybe we even think of it as like him doing his own little podcast there in that moment, which is cool. But well, first off, it references the mind harp of Sharu, which I think you're reading right now. Is that right? So that's cool. I don't think the movie ever... Does the movie reference that at all?
He's about to say it because he mentions the Sharu people and how they're like uptight or whatever. And then he's like, I was on their temple and then I think he's about to say that magic word, mind harp. And that's the exact moment when he gets cut off.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that sucks. That's a bummer. But then the next sentence is really a bummer in current like context with what's going on with the movie, because I feel like this is a line that Pablo inserted purposely. It says Calrissian estimates that he's got at least a trilogy in him, but he'll see how the first one sells. Man, that's heartbreaking to read. I feel like
no, I don't think that's referencing the movie though. I think it's referencing those Lando Calrissian books. Because the first one is the mind harp.
Is there a trilogy of those books?
Yeah.
There's a trilogy of Lando books?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I feel like it's kind of a bummer because it's like, I don't know. You just want to see more Donald Glover as Lando. You want to see more Alden
Yes.
Ehrenreich as Han. And like, man, if this movie is like really only making $30 million in its second weekend, like, man, that just seems less and less likely. So it's a bummer.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Page 90 is definitely an interesting page, like one to go in and look at really closely because it kind of like explains what all the different like coins and like cards and stuff are in Sabak, and briefly explains the rules of Sabak, which is cool, and even talks about the Corellian Corellian Spike version of Sabak, which is different than the normal one. So yeah, that's cool. And then on the next page, 91,
Oof, the Lodge players.
The Lodge players, yes.
Oh man.
Between like, actually, they're all great. I mean, maybe Dava Kasamam is one that I didn't notice quite as much, but Six Eyes, the twins, Karj, Big Guy, maybe my favorite, Big Guy. And then obviously Therm Scissor Punch, who I feel like Therm Scissor Punch peaked like a month ago in terms of like the zeitgeist and like love from Star Wars fans. And since then, like, for me personally, it's all about Karj, after he chews up those fingernails. Like,
yeah. Well, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to unpack. So in my first two viewings, I wasn't really sure like how much you could see of Therm Scissor Punch. But in this,
when do you see him?
Third viewing, I looked very carefully and like I kept my eyes there. And you do see like it's in the first card game at the Lodge. You do see him sitting next to Lando. He's to Lando's left. And you do see him full bodied, and you do see the scissor punchers on the table. And then in like some of the other scenes, in like the dialogue scenes, like after it's like, closer in on Lando for the remainder of the scene, you can see like his two like tentacles hanging down. But you don't see the scissor punchers or, the rest of his body.
Okay. All right.
So he is there for sure, but
so he's not Zuvio.
No, he did not get Zuvio'd, but I think you're right. I think Six Eyes and Karj ended up stealing the show. And I mean, who knows? Maybe the Lord and Miller cut had way more Therm Scissor Punch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Man, that's a bummer.
I don't think so. I think they just came up with a great name for him, and they were like, "Let's talk about this guy, or let's feature this guy early on because his name is great," So
sure, possibly.
Yeah.
We'll see when we get to the novelization, but
that Sabak game is definitely like the highlight of that section of the movie. I mean, it's so good.
It's so good, and I love Karj's backstory here in the book.
Okay.
Says bad luck sticks to Karj. He has a troubled marriage, a clunker of a ship, and crushing debts.
Oh man.
It's his foul-tempered, distracted state that makes him a welcome addition to a sabacc table. He can be counted on to lose money as quickly as he loses his temper.
Oh my god, poor Karj. He's an emotional wreck.
Yeah. So it's no surprise that he's either chomping his fingernails or chomping his cards. I think the jury is out on that one, what he's chewing on in that scene.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't know at first, but I didn't know what to think at first, but Kevin says it's his fingernails, so I don't know. We'll see. But all right, well, let's jump into the last section of the book, at least as far as like the narrative goes, and that is chapter 5, the big score. And this features the Kessel part of the movie and also the Savarine part of the movie. So I don't know much about the Pikes. I know the Pikes kind of debuted, I think, in Clone Wars,
Mm,
and I think a lot of people are really excited to see the Pikes in the movie. Uh, to me, that didn't do that much for me, really.
no.
I don't think they were all that interesting, and I don't really know much about them, and I don't really remember them from the um, Clone Wars.
Mhm.
But I do have a Kessel Guard figure that
Yeah, the
came
Pike
with Lando,
Sentinel
Calrissian.
in
Um,
that 2-pack.
yeah, but we're also going to get a Quay Tollsite figure
Yes,
in
in
Wave
the
4, right?
the mythic Wave 4, which God, I hope happens.
I think it'll happen. I think it will.
um
Um,
because yeah, Wave 4 is when all the good stuff drops. That's when you get like your Beckett figure and Quay Tollsite, and there's just a lot of good stuff in that
yeah,
wave.
it's surprising how light they've gone on figures with this movie so far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to get more. There is clearly, like, publishing wise, there is a push in early September around
Mm-hmm.
Solo, and I'm assuming that's when the Blu-ray will come out. I'm assuming that's when the Wave 4 figures will come out. So I mean, that's cool, but yeah, it's just weird that there's not more. Um, the marketing with this movie is just, it was definitely a different thing. Like, they did it really quickly,
Yeah.
only over a couple of months, and as far as support from like the toys and other kind of merchandise and stuff, it's just a lot lighter than it usually is. And I think that makes sense
Yeah.
because there was just a movie, but at the same time, I don't think it did Solo any favors in terms of box office and that kind of stuff. So it's a bummer. Like when you go to Target or whatever, you don't see like the giant displays and you like with The Last Jedi, they turned those like big cement balls out in front into BB-8, and there was
Mhm.
Ray on the door when you walked into Target, and it was just like, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
This is like, I feel like the marketing as far as product and stuff goes around Solo is like on par with like a B level like Marvel movie, and not like a full on Star Wars movie.
It's like when they rolled out like the Doctor Strange Marvel Legends
Yeah,
figures.
kind of. but
Yeah.
but then again, like, not to go off on a tangent here, but the other night when I was sitting in the movie theater waiting for my third viewing to start, I looked up box office opening weekends for Marvel movies, because that was like one of the conversations that you and I were having, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of people have been having, like, around Solo. It's like, well, why isn't Solo doing better? Marvel can put out movies all the time and they do better, or they do like
Mhm.
whatever, they're consistent. Solo is like in the middle as far as opening box office goes.
Yep.
When you compare it to Marvel movies, it is like, there are plenty of Marvel movies that have not done what Solo did in its opening weekend, which maybe feels a little like, it sounds a little defensive on my part or whatever. But I just kept hearing that argument over and over and over. It's like, well, if Marvel can put movies out all the time and still be popular, and people aren't sick of Marvel movies, then how come Star Wars can't do it? It's like, well, that argument only works if you're only looking at the top 50% of Marvel movies and disregarding the lower 50% of Marvel movies, because like half of the movies they put out don't do as well or didn't do as well as Solo did on its opening weekend. So like, how it is that, like, if Solo doesn't do 150 million in the opening weekend, it's a bomb and a total failure, but if Ant-Man does 80 million in its opening weekend, that's okay. That's a little bit of a double standard, I feel like. So, or just people kind of like maybe not really looking into that argument before they make it, you know what I mean?
I think it's an issue of budget though. Um
Well,
I
that's,
think
oh yeah.
I think Solo, like especially with the reshoots, ended up with a pretty high budget.
Yes, yes, yes. But that's different than like our fans not as excited about a Star Wars movie as they are as Marvel movies. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, no, because like the support is there for Solo. At least, it's average when compared to Marvel movies, I guess. Like, you know, not like all the Marvel movies do better
Yeah.
than this, and somehow Solo can't do a good opening weekend.
I I don't want to like get too far into this conversation, but I think a movie about Han Solo is different than a movie about Ant-Man. I think it's fair to have higher expectations for a movie about Han Solo than
Yeah,
Ant-Man or Doctor Strange.
I think that's fair too, but I have heard very frequently
Mm-hmm.
Marvel can put movies out all the time and nobody gets sick of Marvel movies and they
Yeah.
always do really well. And that's not true. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be true that people aren't sick of them, but it's not true that every Marvel movie is like a roaring success in its opening weekend at the box office and that like Solo is an embarrassment in comparison to all Marvel movies. And that's not the case, you know? And I do think too, like, even like, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I was like, even looking at like Amazing Spider Man 2, and it was
Mm-hmm.
like that the opening weekend was not that great. It was like around Solo or maybe even lower than Solo.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Spider-Man is huge and Spider-Man movies are really popular too. But it's like you look at Batman in the like mid 90s or whatever, and I'm sure those box offices were dropping every movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, they weren't very good. So that's probably part of it. But
Yeah.
there is a saturation issue too, I think, to a certain extent. And I don't know, like we talked about at the top of the show, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that, you know, I didn't really want a Solo movie, and I feel like maybe a lot of people didn't really want a Solo movie. And that's different than Marvel superheroes, where I feel people are like, okay, well, there's a Marvel movie coming out, and it's about Doctor Strange, and I've never really read Doctor Strange, and I don't know if I care about Doctor Strange, but it's Marvel, so I'll go see it, you know?
Yeah.
I think with Solo, it's different. It's like, I love Han Solo. I don't want to see this movie where they're trying to recreate, you know what I mean? I think it just had a negative taste to it.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess like um also like lead actors are huge. Like I think there are people who saw an Ant-Man movie because it starred Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
There are people who saw Doctor Strange because it starred Benedict Cumberbatch. Um
But
and
it,
you know
well,
that we
that should
didn't
hold
have
true
that.
to Donald Glover though, too, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I
He's
remember
he was
Kevin
huge at the time that
talking to us about like, is that going to be like a huge factor for this movie? Like, is it going to bring in like a crossover audience of like Childish Gambino fans and stuff? And I think the answer to that is no. Or maybe it did, but maybe that fan base isn't. I mean, there wasn't like a secret group of fans turning out in huge numbers for this movie in the ways that we saw for like Wonder Woman or Black Panther. We saw these like we saw different demographics,
Mhm.
you know, coming to the movie that like surprised and delighted the box office figures.
Mhm.
But like it does feel like this is like pretty much just the Star Wars fans turned out. Like
Yeah.
which is fine. I think it can totally be sustainable. I'm going to keep harping on this, but I think once Disney has their streaming service going, this box office stuff isn't even going to matter when the Disney streaming service is the place you can go watch this stuff after, you know, it's left theaters. And I think like Solo is a case where the budget was just got out of control because they basically made the movie twice.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think it's the end of Star Wars stories. I don't think it's even the end of like Han Solo movies. I think uh, I feel like we're still going to get more of this. I think we're still going to get like I'm hoping we get to a point where we get 2 Star Wars movies a year. Like I want that. We'll see if it happens, but I don't think it's like people like acting like because of this like everything's off the table now. There's
Yeah.
like no possibilities for anything, like everything's canceled, nothing's happening. I think, you know, I think it's a learning experience for Disney, and yeah, we'll probably see some stuff change, but like this is brand new. Like this putting 2 Star Wars movies within 6 months of each other is brand new. Um, I think it could totally happen again. But I think it's the landscape is going to be very different in like 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Also, like, and not to be defensive because I love these movies. I also think like because everyone is just comparing over and over to Marvel. I think we are at a height of Marvel movie popularity, and I think it's riding a high. And I don't know once once contracts start running out for Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and some of these people, and after people start to realize the cyclical nature of comic books and this style of storytelling, like, I don't know if they will always be at this place. I think they'll, like, Black Panther and Infinity War is just like beyond anyone's expectations for popularity. I think it's going to peak for a while. I think Ant-Man's going to do really well on this wave. Captain Marvel is going to be awesome, and it's going to do really well. And then I think there will be like a decline and then a stabilization. And I think like the same thing will kind of happen to Star Wars, because I don't think you're ever going to get another Force Awakens. And I also don't know if you'll ever get a like lightning in a bottle type situation of Black Panther back to back with Infinity War again.
Right. But I think that we should expect that Episode 9 will do as well as Last Jedi, if not better, probably better. And that's fine.
Probably as well as.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know what
if it did.
To go back and look at the Empire numbers compared to Return of the Jedi numbers and the Attack of the Clones numbers compared to Revenge of the Sith. But I do think when Ant-Man 2 comes out this summer, I think it'll do about as well as Solo did in its opening weekend. I doubt it will be better than Solo was. I could be wrong.
It will be bigger. It will be bigger. I'm calling it right now.
All right. Well, okay. I mean, maybe it will. But if it only does what Solo did in its opening weekend, I don't think you're going to see it was a failure headlines, it was a bomb, etc. I don't think you'll see those headlines. So I don't know. We'll see. But we're off course because we didn't finish talking about this official guide, and there's just a couple more things I want to talk about. Sagwa rules. I like Sagwa. I've talked to a couple people who are not like quite as huge into Star Wars as me, who are like, how come Sagwa looks all weird? And like, well, they don't use the term Sagwa, but how come those Wookiees like looked all weird like they shouldn't? I think it totally makes sense that like Sagwa and the other Wookiees look really weird because they're like emaciated. Like they're supposed to be malnourished and struggling to stay alive. So I think that's why they look the way they do. So yeah. I thought the Wookiee stuff was great personally. Yeah, Senna, who is like Moroff from Rogue One. I think that's cool. I do think though, like between Senna and then Tubes from Enfys Nest's gang, it feels a little bit like Neil Scanlan and the Creature Crew were just like, well, let's just grab these two creatures from Rogue One and we'll just use them again. You know what I mean?
Yes. So a few things on that. Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case with Senna. They're like, we'll tint his fur a bit, which is fine. That's a very Lucasfilm thing to do, which goes back all the way through the original trilogy. But also there's those half-headed people in Dryden Voss's yacht that were totally like unused characters from Rogue One. I believe they're actually in the visual guide for Rogue One, visual dictionary. And then Tubes. Is that the same Two Tubes as with Saw Gerrera? Like, does he...
Well, are you asking me if the character is the same, or are you asking me if the costume is the same, or whatever you want to say? Like
all of the above.
Okay, I think it's the same mask, or like whatever you want to... I mean, it might be altered a little bit, but I think, yes, it's absolutely... I don't think they recreated that or anything. I think it's the same. That is Two Tubes from Rogue One. Now, if in the continuity it's supposed to be the same character or a different one, it's hard to say. I mean, Two Tubes is working with Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. Tubes is working with Enfys Nest in Solo. Rogue One is taking place after Solo. So, I mean, I think totally it would be logical that Tubes or Two Tubes, whatever you want to say, could have moved from Enfys Nest gang to Tissaugeraris. So, maybe it is the same character, maybe it's not. And it doesn't really matter to me, but, it was a moment though where I was like, oh, that's two tubes, and now I look at the official guide and I'm like, wait, is it two tubes? So I don't know if I'm supposed to think it is or not.
Well, that's save that for a Q&A at a panel at Celebration.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Be
totally.
that guy.
Yeah.
Pages 108 and 109. Lots of droids. Some really great ones here. I'm a big fan of the P1SZE admin mech on page 109, the orange and white one next to the R2 unit.
Oh, yeah.
There, he looks like the letter A, a capital A.
Yeah, totally.
It's pretty great. Big fan of pretty much the entire bottom row on page 109.
The Gonk droid or the Gonk-esque droids, the power droids.
Yes. I don't remember which one it was of these that was walking across the...
like stomping, like gleefully stomping on the desk. Yeah, that's a great moment.
In the Kessel Mines, that was really fun. I love that.
That's a great moment. Yeah. Okay. Well, Savarine and the Savarians kind of are towards the end here, and then more info about Enfys Nest gang, which is cool. I think all the costumes look really good. I like how there's like a sort of like a through line visually between all those like kind of costumes and stuff. They look like a gang together. So, but nothing, super, I don't know, kind of like compelling in that section or like surprising or anything.
Yeah, it would help if they had their masks off.
Yeah.
Because I know who Weasel is. I know who Tubes is. But I can't tell because I want to know like if one of these was the Mimbanese person. But Taishin Moxa on page 116 mentions in there the droid Gorta or Gatra. That's another thing that pops up in Most Wanted.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I'm really excited to read that book. I'm gonna do the Art of Solo next. I think I could do them concurrently. We'll see, but yeah. So then, okay, to wrap things up here, chapter 6 is called Going Solo, and this is definitely different from the visual dictionaries because it's a little bit of a behind the scenes kind of section. And I love this because you can tell that it's very much geared towards kids. And it should be, this is a DK book. It's for like kids, like, my older son's age, I think, like, and it's great. So it's got very brief little snippets of information about the, behind the scenes process and stuff like that. There are some things from the art of book, or at least from the concept phase of the movie, and it's just really cool. So yeah, it's only like maybe 4 to 5. I think it's only 4 pages that section, that chapter, but it's still kind of nice that they throw that in there. So, and it definitely differentiates it from the other making of book, or I'm sorry, the other visual dictionary books. And then very last thing, Ryan, I want to point out is I love in the index, in the like kind of third page of the index, there's this character Susat Volupasite. Just a very metal, like very heavy metal, very like, I don't know.
Goat Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
that guy
metal
rules.
cover. Yep.
I'm assuming he's from Kessel, but I don't recognize that alien from the movie.
I don't
but
remember seeing him in there. But you also, on the page after that, you get Imperial Officers Tag and Bink.
Sure you do. Yeah, you do.
Which that's a nice shout out to the Legends fans. And I did notice, I was in my a local comic shop yesterday, they reprinted the Tag and Bink comics.
Yeah, as
like a mini novel, right? Omnibus for $8. I didn't actually grab it, but I've never actually read those.
Yeah, me neither.
So I think I might. I have to go back to the shop next week, anyways. But I think I might actually finally grab that, especially knowing that they are technically characters in the film. I mean, they're not in the film; they're in the story.
You know what's really interesting about Susat Volpasite? Like I'm looking for him in the index, and I don't see him actually listed in the index. So he's on the index page, but I don't know where to find any information about him.
No.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
But
keep your eyes peeled.
Hey, man. Kids. I could take a 3 3/4 figure of him for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, that does it for the official guide to Solo: A Star Wars Story. And if you don't have it, you should definitely pick it up because there's tons of great stuff in there. It's very visually appealing. And
it's dirt cheap on Amazon right now. It's like $12. Yeah, totally. It's insane.
Yeah. And I don't know what the Art of book is going for right now, but I ended up picking it up. Weirdly, I did not have it pre-ordered, so I didn't get it on day one like I normally would. But I ordered it sometime last week. And it's a $40 cover price, but it was on Amazon for about $25 one day last week. And I had looked 1 or 2 other times, and it was in the $30 range, like $30, $35 the other times I looked. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend grabbing it, sooner than later. And just keep an eye on the price if you're going to order it online because it moves up and down a little bit. But I would say in between 25 and 30 is what it's going for. And that's obviously a must-have as well. So, but this one's a little cheaper. So if you want to get one, it's like start off like this one, you can pick up like, I felt like it was like an immediate, just grab it. It's only $12, not a big deal versus the Art of book. I've got to like, kind of gotta be prepared to get that one. Like make sure I can afford it and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I also noticed Most Wanted is like $10 for the hardcover on Amazon. It's also, I bought it on Kindle just because I wanted to read it immediately. And it was $10.99 for the Kindle version.
Cool.
But the Chewbacca and the Forest of Fear book has been like, I've been tempted on that one because that's been going for around $6 Prime shipped. On Amazon, and it looks like it's pretty fun. So I might end up grabbing that.
That might be maybe my next order is going to be Most Wanted and the Chewbacca and the Forest of Fear. Yeah, I saw that at Barnes and Noble the other day, and it looks cool.
Yeah,
and I want to read that Choose Your Own Adventure book too. So I mean, there's some decent stuff here with released alongside Solo, and then there's more coming in September. So
I just bought issue 1 when I went to the comic shop last night of Lando Double or Nothing. I haven't actually sat down to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to check that one out as well. So cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap it up here. So this is like our third solo kind of focused podcast. I don't know that it'll be our last. I guess we'll see. But we'll definitely be doing a Power of the 90s coming up here pretty soon too, in the next couple weeks as well. So
1994 is coming.
Yeah. And I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can do a whole show at some point here with maybe not just you and I, but get another Blockade runner or 2 on the show to talk about maybe where we think things are going after Solo coming out and being a great movie, but not having the response we wanted. It's curious. There has been heavy discussion of the Boba Fett movie, heavy discussion of the Obi-Wan movie. We've got Darth Maul popping up in Solo. A clear interest in doing Solo sequels from John Kasdan and I think Ron Howard. So what the future of the Star Wars story movies is going forward and whether or not they're going to try to continue building this into like a sort of a little mini kind of MC. Like it seems like it could become like a little mini, and I don't mean Star Wars. I mean like the Han Solo, this period of time, like a sort of like a mini MCU with like scoundrel, smuggler, bounty hunter, type stories. And I think that could be so good and so cool. But I wonder if it's still possible with what's going on with Solo right now. I hope so. But That's a whole different discussion. What we'd want to see in an Obi-Wan movie, a Boba Fett movie, a Solo sequel, etc.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I think we'll get a continuation of this story. It may not be in film form.
Yes.
I feel like there will be more films.
I do too.
Is my gut response. Despite the evidence, despite the numbers, I think it's going to keep going. But I think at the very least, we will see like books, comics. I could see an ongoing comic series set in this, even if there are films set in like this underground. There's still that Star Wars game that was being worked on before the Disney sale, the 1313 or whatever, that was all about the underground stuff. And I wonder if like concepts are being pulled from there, or if that's something that ties into this, who knows. But
and it just has such a serialized vibe, it's got like such a serial kind of vibe to it, that just like Indiana Jones, I'm a broken record on that, but just like Indiana Jones, like you could so easily just do like Han Solo and the Temple of Doom, except not Temple of Doom, but you know what I mean? There's the opportunity to do lots of little Han Solo stories, I feel like, and it would be a shame if they don't. I think, it seems likely that maybe a Solo sequel with a smaller budget, maybe even smaller than the initial budget of Solo, not the, reshoot, including reshoot, budget. But yeah, I could see like for sure. Maybe we're going to have to take a more conservative route with the sequel, but hopefully they will do it, especially because I think the fan reaction and the overall kind of like people who've actually seen the movie like seem to like it. I don't hear a lot of negative buzz about the movie, so I think that's a good thing going forward too. If they can get the marketing down, if they can get a better release date, build some buzz over a lengthier period of time, and make a Solo sequel seem like a movie people want to see and need to see, then maybe this, it could be a situation where the sequel does a lot better than the original.
Yeah,
that would be great. So,
or maybe the Solo sequel we get is the Boba Fett movie. Maybe we get Alden back as Solo in that. Maybe we get some Donald Glover. Maybe we get some Kira, some Maul, some Memphis Nest. I mean, who knows? Like,
well, let's do an episode about that soon. Let's try to get some other people on too. So like maybe we can get Dan and Kevin, or I don't know, maybe we can get some other people on that show, because I think there's a lot to talk about as far as all those extra movies go, and I'd love to hear what everybody kind of thinks about what they'd like to see in those. So, but yeah, you're right. But I guess part of me just feels like Alden was so good as Han that I don't want it to be relegated to like 20 minutes in the Boba Fett movie. I want it to be like a full-on Solo sequel.
Yeah,
which is so funny, because 6 months ago I was like, why do I need this movie? I don't want this.
But what if whoever plays Boba Fett is super good too?
Yeah.
Like,
see, there's a whole nother conversation. Who should play Boba Fett? What should that movie be? We can't have that conversation now. But my vote's for Tamora Morrison. But we'll talk about it later on another episode, maybe. All right. Okay.
Cool.
All right. So until we come back with our promised Star Wars anthology movies episode, and our promised Power of the 90s 1994 episode. Until then, you can track us down at blockaderunnerpodcast.com, and you'll find links to all of our episodes, all of our videos there. You can follow us on Twitter at Blockade Run, or if you want to follow Ryan specifically on Twitter, he is
at Brawn Dwarf, BRAWNDWARF.
We'd love to hear what you guys thought about Solo, and or what you'd like to see in upcoming Star Wars movies. So you could email us at blockaderunnerpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at the Blockade Runner, and probably a couple of other places too, which are all linked again at that site, blockaderunnerpodcast.com. So thanks for listening or watching. Ryan, thank you for jumping on and talking about this cool official guide, and for giving Solo another shot after you didn't like it the first time, going and
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong about Star Wars. I have very strong opinions and emotions about Star Wars, but you know, I always I need to make sure I'm always giving Star Wars the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And especially when all of my friends you know, see value in something, not to be stubborn and just go through with it, and you know, give it another shot. And if maybe you're feeling like I did after my first viewing and not loving it, I would highly recommend going a couple more times.
Yeah, and it's not even like, not to put words in your mouth, but it's not even that your like feelings about the movie, like specific parts of the movie or elements of the movie changed all that much. Like the stuff that didn't work that well for you still doesn't work that well for you. It's just that like overall you can enjoy the larger experience after more than one viewing. When, you know, with only one viewing, you really like those things that don't work kind of like destroyed the overall experience for you. So, you know, it's not like you're like, oh, I hated that Darth Maul stuff and now it's awesome. Like, it's not that. It's just that it just, seeing it more than once kind of made the whole thing come together and work for you in a way it didn't. But like all the criticisms you had in the movie after your first viewing, I think are totally valid and like still kind of stand. It's just that the movie as a whole works now after more viewings and it didn't after one. So
for sure.
If you really love something like we really love Star Wars, it's worth giving it, like you said, exactly like you said, it's worth giving it like another try. Just trying to stay a little open-minded and see, you know, kind of what happens. So,
yep.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, yes, we will be back soon. More Blockade Runner podcast. And thanks once again. And may the force be with you.